Mariana hurried through the streets of Los Angeles, her heart racing with anticipation for her second day of work. The sounds of cars and the buzz of people blended around her, creating the distinctive symphony of the bustling city. Suddenly, a sharp cry cut through the air. "Help! Someone help!" Mariana turned abruptly, her eyes scanning the crowd. A few meters away, a small group was forming around something on the ground. Without hesitation, she ran towards the commotion. "Excuse me, please let me through," Mariana asked, pushing her way through the curious onlookers. In the center of the circle, an 8-year-old girl lay motionless on the ground. Her pale face contrasted with the brown hair spread out on the asphalt. Next to her, an elderly woman was holding the child's hand, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. Mariana knelt beside the girl. "I'm trained in first aid. What happened?" The elderly woman, her voice trembling, replied. She just collapsed. We were walking and suddenly..." Mariana nodded, her mind quickly reviewing the training she had received. She leaned over the girl, placing her ear near the child's mouth and nose. "She's breathing, but very weak," Mariana announced. Turning to the crowd, she asked loudly, "Has anyone called an ambulance?" A man in a suit raised his hand. "I called, but they said it will take at least 15 minutes due to traffic." Mariana knew she couldn't wait. Every second was crucial. "All right, I'll start CPR. Can someone time it for me?" A young student volunteered, holding her smartphone. "I'm ready." Mariana positioned her hands on the girl's chest and began compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted aloud, maintaining a steady rhythm. The crowd around watched in tense silence, only the sound of Mariana's counting and the occasional sobs of the elderly woman breaking the quiet. After 30 compressions, Mariana gently tilted the girl's head back, pinched her nose, and gave 2 rescue breaths. The child's chest rose slightly. "Come on, sweetheart. Stay with me," Mariana murmured, resuming the compressions. The seconds dragged like hours. Mariana could feel the sweat dripping down her back, but she refused to stop. Her mind was focused on one thing: saving that child. After what felt like an eternity, but was only a few minutes, the girl coughed weakly. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the crowd. Mariana felt a wave of emotion wash over her body, but maintained her composure. Slowly, the girl's eyes fluttered open, blinking in confusion. Mariana smiled gently, tears of relief forming in her own eyes. "Hello, my name is Mariana." "What's your name?" she asked softly, her voice full of emotion. Alice," the girl replied in a hoarse voice. At that moment, an elegantly dressed middle-aged woman pushed through the crowd, calling out Alice's name. "Alice! Oh my God, Alice!" The woman knelt beside Mariana, pulling Alice into a tight embrace. "What happened? I only turned away for a second to get something from my bag and..." "She collapsed, ma'am," Mariana explained. "But she's okay now. Still, it's important to take her to the hospital for a full checkup." The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Carmem, the family's housekeeper, thanked Mariana profusely. "You saved her life." "How can I thank you?" Mariana smiled, shaking her head. "There's no need to thank me. I just did what anyone would do." At that moment, the sirens of the ambulance could be heard approaching. Mariana needed to leave, but she hesitated to leave Alice. Mariana glanced at her watch and realized with a jolt that she was significantly late for her meeting at the firm. With a heavy heart, she said goodbye to Alice and Mrs. Carmem, promising to check on the girl at the hospital. She then rushed to catch a cab back to the office, her stomach churning with anxiety about what awaited her. Upon arriving at Martinez Associates, Mariana was immediately directed to Mr. Garcia's office. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves before knocking on the door. "Come in," came the cold voice from the other side. Mariana entered, finding Mr. Garcia sitting behind his imposing mahogany desk, a stern expression on his face. "Miss Silva," he began, his voice laden with disappointment, "I am extremely disappointed. Your lateness cost the company a valuable opportunity with an important client. What do you have to say for yourself?" Mariana straightened her shoulders, determined to explain the situation. "Mr. Garcia, I apologize for the delay. There was a medical emergency on the street." She then recounted the events of the morning, describing how she found Alice collapsed and performed the resuscitation procedures. Mariana spoke passionately about the importance of helping others and how she couldn't simply ignore a child in danger. However, as she spoke, Mariana noticed Mr. Garcia's expression did not soften. On the contrary, his eyebrows furrowed even more, forming a severe line. When she finished her account, there was a tense silence. Then, Mr. Garcia spoke, his voice cold as ice. "Miss Silva, that's quite a convenient story, but hard to believe. Even if it's true, the fact remains. You failed to fulfill your professional responsibilities. At Martinez Associates, we value punctuality and commitment above all else." Mariana felt her heart sink. "Sir, I understand the importance of professional commitment, but surely the life of a child—" "Enough," Mr. Garcia interrupted brusquely. "Unfortunately, I cannot tolerate this kind of irresponsible behavior, especially from a newly hired employee. You're fired, Miss Silva, for cause." The words hit Mariana like a punch to the stomach. She stood there, stunned, as Mr. Garcia continued to talk about exit procedures and badge returns. His words seemed distant, muffled by the sound of blood pounding in her ears. With trembling legs, Mariana left Mr. Garcia's office. She walked to her desk, feeling the curious glances and whispers of her now former colleagues. With shaking hands, she began to gather her few personal belongings. A colleague, Anna, approached hesitantly. "Mariana? Are you okay? What happened in there?" Mariana looked at Anna, struggling against the tears threatening to fall. I was fired," she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Anna was shocked. "But why? You're so dedicated." Mariana briefly explained what had happened. When she finished, she saw a mix of sympathy and disbelief on Anna's face. "This isn't fair," Anna exclaimed. "You saved a life." Mariana just shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "Sometimes doing the right thing comes at a cost," she said softly. With her box of belongings in her arms, Mariana walked to the elevator. As the doors closed, she allowed a single tear to slide down her cheek. Despite the pain of the injustice, a small part of her knew she would do it all again if necessary. Alice's life was worth more than any job. As she left the building, Mariana looked up at the Los Angeles sky, feeling the weight of an uncertain future ahead of her. But in her heart, there was one certainty. She had done the right thing, and somehow, somewhere, that had to count for something. That night, Mr. Martinez, owner of Martinez Associates and Alice's grandfather, was at his home office reviewing some documents when he decided to turn on the TV to catch the news of the day. He settled into his leather chair, a glass of red wine in hand as the local news began. "Good evening, Los Angeles," the news anchor began. "Our first story tonight is an inspiring tale of everyday heroism." Martinez leaned forward, intrigued. "This morning, on Wilshire Boulevard, a young woman saved the life of an 8-year-old girl who had collapsed on the sidewalk. The screen showed footage captured by security cameras and passers-by's phones. Mr. Martinez's heart nearly stopped when he recognized his granddaughter, Alice, lying on the ground. "Oh my God," he murmured, gripping the arms of the chair. The report continued, showing a female figure performing CPR on the girl. Although the savior's face was not clear due to the camera angle, Mr. Martinez could see the determination in her movements. "The identity of the heroine remains unknown," the reporter continued. "Witnesses report that she left the scene as soon as the ambulance arrived, refusing any recognition." Mr. Martinez turned off the TV, his hands shaking. He immediately picked up the phone and called his daughter, Lucia, Alice's mother. "Lucia, did you see the news?" he asked as soon as she answered. "Dad, no, I was putting Alice to bed. What happened?" Mr. Martinez explained what he had seen, his voice choked with emotion. On the other end of the line, he could hear Lucia gasping. "Yes, Dad," she confirmed, her voice trembling. "Alice collapsed this morning due to a sudden drop in blood pressure. Mrs. Carmam called me from the hospital. She said a young woman saved Alice performing first aid. I had no idea it was so serious. Why didn't you tell me? Mr. Martinez asked, a mix of concern and frustration in his voice. I'm sorry, Dad. Alice was fine when I arrived at the hospital, and with all the commotion, I should have called. I'm sorry. Mr. Martinez took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. It's okay, dear. What's important is that Alice is safe. But we need to find this woman. We need to thank her properly. Yes, of course, Lucia agreed. But how? She left without leaving any information. Leave that to me, Mr. Martinez said, his mind already working on a plan. I'll mobilize all the resources of the company if necessary, but we will find her. After hanging up, Mr. Martinez spent the night awake, his mind filled with thoughts of the mysterious woman who had saved his granddaughter. He felt deeply in debt and was determined to express his gratitude. The next morning, he arrived early at the company, calling an emergency meeting with all the management team. The conference room quickly filled with anxious executives, all wondering about the sudden summons. Mr. Martinez entered, his serious demeanor contrasting with the agitation around him. He took his place at the head of the table, looking at each of the attendees before speaking. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice firm. Yesterday, something extraordinary happened, something that made me question our priorities as a company and as human beings. The executives exchanged puzzled glances as Mr. Martinez recounted the events of the previous day, explaining how his granddaughter had been saved by a compassionate stranger. This woman, he continued, put the life of a child above any other consideration. She represents the kind of person we want not only in our company, but in our society. At this moment, Garcia, who was sitting near Mr. Martinez, cleared his throat nervously. Sir, if I may. Yes, Garcia? Martinez encouraged him to speak. Well, it's just that yesterday Garcia hesitated, his face turning red. I fired an employee for being late to an important meeting. Martinez rubbed his forehead. Go on. She made up a ridiculous story about saving a child on the street, Garcia said, nervously laughing, trying to mask his growing discomfort. The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Martinez's face visibly paled, his eyes widening with realization. Garcia, he said slowly, his voice trembling slightly. What was the name of this employee? Mariana Silva, sir, Garcia replied, finally realizing the gravity of the situation. Mr. Martinez stood up abruptly, his hands resting on the table, the knuckles white from the force with which he gripped it. When he spoke, his voice was low but filled with an intensity that made everyone in the room shrink. Garcia, you fired the woman who saved my granddaughter's life, he said, each word laden with emotion. Your lack of compassion and hasty judgment nearly cost us an exceptional employee. Garcia was frozen, panic evident on his face. I didn't know, sir. She didn't mention the child's name. Silence. Mr. Martinez interrupted, his voice echoing through the room. I don't want to hear your excuses. I want Mariana Silva back in this company immediately, and you, Garcia, are suspended until further notice. Mr. Martinez then turned to the rest of the team, who watched the scene in shock. This is a lesson for all of us. We are more than just a profit-seeking company. We are part of a community, and our actions have real consequences on people's lives. From today, I want a change in our corporate culture. Let's value not only results but also compassion, integrity, and humanity. He paused, looking each person in the eyes before continuing. Now, my priority is to talk to Mariana Silva. I want one of our employees to go personally to her address and bring her back, he said to one of the company leaders. Offer her not only her job back but also a promotion and a substantial bonus. And, more importantly, offer her our sincerest apologies. With these words, Mr. Martinez ended the meeting, leaving behind a room full of stunned executives and a visibly shaken Garcia. The search for Mariana Silva had begun, along with the beginning of a transformation at Martinez Associates. Meanwhile, Mariana was facing her own struggles. Sitting in her small apartment, she stared at her laptop screen, scrolling through job ads with a growing sense of despair. A notification sound snapped her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Anna, her former co-worker. "Mariana, you won't believe what's happening here. Mr. Martinez found out you saved his granddaughter. He's furious with Garcia and wants to find you. Call me." Mariana was paralyzed, rereading the message several times. Her heart raced with a mix of hope and apprehension. She hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone and calling Anna. "Anna, is it true? What's happening?" Mariana asked as soon as her friend answered. "Mariana, yes, it's all true. The office is in chaos. Mr. Martinez called an emergency meeting this morning and practically declared war on Garcia when he found out he fired you. He wants to bring you back, with a promotion." Mariana felt tears forming in her eyes. I don't know what to say. This all feels so surreal. "Listen," Anna continued, lowering her voice. "He's looking for you. Mr. Martinez sent one of the employees to find you in person. But I thought, well, maybe you'd want to know this before they officially contact you." Mariana thanked Anna for the information, hung up the phone, and sank into the sofa, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her wanted to rush back to the company immediately, reclaim her job and clear her name. But another part hesitated, still hurt by the injustice she had faced. As she pondered what to do, the doorbell rang. Confused, Mariana went to the door and opened it, finding herself face to face with an elegant woman, Lucia, Alice's mother. "Miss Silva?" Lucia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Lucia Martinez. May I come in? We need to talk." Stunned, Mariana nodded and stepped aside, allowing Lucia to enter. The two women sat down in the small living room, a tense silence hanging in the air. "Miss Silva?" "Mariana," Lucia began. "First, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for saving my daughter Alice. I cannot express my gratitude enough." Mariana felt a lump in her throat. "There's no need to thank me, Mrs. Martinez. I just did what anyone would do." Lucia shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "No, not just anyone. You risked everything to save a stranger. And for that you suffered unjustly." "Mariana," Lucia continued, leaning forward and taking the young woman's hands in hers. "My father wants to offer you not just your job back, but a leadership position in the company. He sees in you the kind of person who should shape the future of Martinez Associates." Mariana was silent for a moment, absorbing everything. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "Mrs. Martinez, I greatly appreciate your visit and the generous offer. But I need some time to think. What happened yesterday made me question many things about my career and my values." Lucia nodded understandingly. "Of course, I completely understand. Take the time you need. But please consider not just the job offer, but the opportunity to make a real change in the company's culture. My father is determined to transform Martinez Associates, and he believes you could be a key part of that change." After Lucia's departure, Mariana spent the following days in deep reflection. She thought about her journey up to that point, the struggles and sacrifices she had made to reach São Paulo and build a career. She thought about Alice and the joy she had felt knowing the girl was safe. And she thought about the power she now had, not just to resume her job, but to potentially influence an entire organization. A week after Lucia's visit, Mariana finally made her decision. She presented herself at the reception of Martinez Associates, immediately causing a stir among the employees. Mr. Martinez was notified of her arrival and came down personally to greet her. As the elevator doors opened, revealing the imposing owner of the company, Mariana felt her heart race but remained composed. "Miss Silva," Mr. Martinez said, his voice filled with emotion. "You cannot imagine how happy I am to see you. Please, come with me." As they walked together through the company's corridors, under the curious gazes of the employees, Mariana knew she was about to start a new chapter in her life. A chapter that promised challenges, but also the opportunity to make a real difference that she had always dreamed of. The door to Mr. Martinez's office closed behind them, marking the beginning of a conversation that would not only change Mariana's future, but also the future of Martinez Associates, and perhaps even the future of how companies view their social and human responsibilities. Mr. Martinez's office was spacious and elegant, with large windows offering a panoramic view of São Paulo. Mariana sat in a comfortable leather armchair, while Mr. Martinez took the seat behind his imposing mahogany desk. "Miss Silva," he began, his voice laden with sincerity. "First of all, I want to apologize. What happened to you was unforgivable, and I take full responsibility for allowing such an insensitive culture to develop in my company." Mariana nodded, remaining composed. "I appreciate your words, Mr. Martinez, but I'm not here just for an apology." Mr. Martinez smiled slightly, impressed by the young woman's firmness. "Of course not. You're here because you have something valuable to offer, something beyond professional skills. You have integrity, compassion, and courage, qualities that I now realize are as important as any technical expertise." He paused, looking directly into Mariana's eyes. "I want to offer you not just your job back, but a leadership position. I'd like you to take on the role of Director of Social Responsibility and Corporate Ethics. It's a new department we're creating, inspired directly by your actions." Mariana was momentarily speechless, the magnitude of the offer hitting her hard. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with emotion. "Mr. Martinez, this is an incredible and unexpected offer. But before accepting, I need to know, what exactly would this position entail? What would be my real capacity to influence change in the company?" Mr. Martinez smiled, clearly approving of the question. "Excellent question, Mariana. Your role would be to implement policies that ensure our company operates in an ethical and socially responsible manner. This includes everything from fair labor practices to sustainability initiatives and community support programs. You would have the autonomy to propose and implement changes, reporting directly to me." Mariana thought for a moment before responding. "I understand and appreciate the opportunity. But for this to work, we would need a real commitment to change. It can't be just a public relations move." "I fully agree," Mr. Martinez replied, leaning forward in his chair. "That's why I want you to be part of the executive board. Your voice will be heard at the highest levels of decision-making in the company." Mariana felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a tremendous responsibility. "Mr. Martinez, I deeply appreciate your offer, but I need a day to think. This is a decision that will affect not only my career, but potentially the lives of many people." Mr. Martinez nodded understandingly. "Of course, Mariana, take as much time as you need, but know that we are eager to have you back, ready to lead this transformation." That night, Mariana barely slept. She weighed the pros and cons carefully, considering the impact she could have and the challenges she would face. By morning, her decision was made. When she returned to Martinez Associates the next day, she was met with anticipation. Mr. Martinez was waiting for her in his office, his face a mix of hope and anxiety. "Mr. Martinez," Mariana began, her voice firm and determined, "I accept your offer, but with a few conditions." Mr. Martinez raised his eyebrows, surprised, but gestured for her to continue. "First, I want full transparency in our operations. Second, we need to establish a significant fund for social and environmental projects. And third, I want to implement a mandatory ethics and social responsibility training program for all employees, from interns to the CEO." There was a moment of tense silence as Mr. Martinez considered Mariana's demands. Then, to her surprise, he smiled widely. "Mariana, you have just proven that you are exactly the person we need. I accept all your conditions. Welcome aboard." In the months that followed, Mariana worked tirelessly to implement changes at Martinez Associates. She faced resistance from some of the more conservative sectors of the company, but also found unexpected allies. One of her first acts was to create a mentorship program, pairing senior executives with young talents from underserved communities. She also led an initiative to make the company's operations more sustainable, significantly reducing Martinez Associates' carbon footprint. The impact of her work soon became visible. Employee satisfaction increased, turnover decreased, and the company began to attract talent that valued an ethical and socially responsible work environment. 1 year after her return during Alice's birthday party, Mr. Martinez made a surprising announcement. He appointed Mariana as the new CEO of Martinez Associates. "Mariana has taught us a valuable lesson," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "True success is not measured merely by numbers on a spreadsheet, but by the difference we make in people's lives. She saved my granddaughter without hesitation, showing the kind of leadership and integrity we want in our company." Mariana, with tears in her eyes, accepted the position with humility and determination. She knew this was an opportunity not only to lead a major company, but to create a business model that could inspire change throughout the corporate sector.